Oregon football's on a bye week, and recruiting does not stop. So we check in on the Ducks' recruiting efforts for the 2023 cycle, and what does it take to keep guys out of the transfer portal when it comes to playing time? We'll talk to a guy who knows a thing or two about both. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, D1 play-by-play broadcaster and lifelong Oregon Ducks fan. Thank you for making this your first listen or your first view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why if you haven't already, and thank you to everybody who has, like, comment, subscribe, wherever you listen to or watching this show. Today's episode brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. And if they have a prop for how much we will learn on a given show with John Garcia Jr., the director of recruiting for Sports Illustrated, John, I'm taking the over. Every single time I'm going to come back to it and take the over. And of course, recruiting is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs here at the Locked On Podcast Network. John, great to have you back on the show.
Always good to be on with you, talking Ducks. Good timing, right? With the bye week, a lot of coaches will kind of recenter, dissect that board and see where things stands here in the home stretch. So very good timing.
Yeah, the coaching staff still focused on the game just over a week from now against UCLA. That, fingers crossed, will bring College Game Day back to Eugene for the first time in several years, shall we say. I actually can't remember last time I was there. It'd be a good thing to look up here after we're done recording the show. But first thing I want to talk to you about, John, is the transfer portal, because there have been a number of players that get involved for this Oregon offense this year. It's been really the strength of Kenny Dillingham is we see all the tight ends get in on it, and a bunch of receivers are used, and a bunch of running backs are used, but it's still not everybody, right? Byron Cardwell, even when healthy, has been kind of the fourth running back of the group. That's a guy who's got a good amount of talent. Dante Thornton, I thought he would take a leap this year like Troy Franklin has, but he hasn't. Those are kind of a couple of the leading candidates that I look at and go, yeah, if they transfer after this season, I won't be shocked. I think Seven McGee and or Sean Dollars could fall into that category too. So specifically with skill players, guys who want the football, and that's, part of their MO as players at the collegiate level. What do you need to keep a guy on the roster when he's maybe not as involved as he could be?
Well, yeah, this is new, right? This is something that has not always been, I don't want to say an issue, but not always been on the top of mind for college football coaches, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on at this time. I think the best way to kind of summarize it is, hey, you've got to check in with your own guys first, right? We talk about it in recruiting all the time. When kids are verbally committed to school X and other schools are still calling, school X still has to recruit that prospect all the way through National Signing Day. And now with the advent of the transfer portal and really the acceleration and adoption of the transfer portal, you've got to sort of treat your roster that way as well. So I think it starts with kind of the idealistic goal of, hey, we're your coaches, we're going to be hard on you, but we also need you to be transparent with us, right? If you start to flirt with that idea, if you start to think about some other options, come sit down with us and we'll talk about it. I think idealistically, again, those would be the most ideal scenario. So your Seven McGee's, your Dante Thorntons, whoever it is, especially young guys, right? I mean, these are the type of prospects you would expect to reciprocate that. Now, what makes it hard for Oregon is these kids, in these cases in particular, weren't recruited and brought to Oregon by this coaching staff. So I think that's already sort of a detractor towards staying put. Obviously, anytime there's a coaching change, there's that immediate rush of portal talent. Then there's that secondary rush of talent that after giving things, the good old fashioned try. And then the third level is always kind of where we're at now with the Oregon Ducks. Right now, spring has come and gone. The season has kicked off, and you're right in the thick of it. It's a bye week. You really sort of know where you stand relative to playing time and progression or whatever's most important to you as a prospect. So this is typically the third wave, excluding fall camp, of course, and those position battles. This is typically the third wave of at least portal consideration, I would say. We're seeing it across the country. We've seen it at Notre Dame, Auburn, a couple other schools. Guys are informing these coaching staffs, hey, I want to maintain my red shirt, so I'm going to play in 4 or less games so that I could hold this year of eligibility, and then I'm going to hit the portal when the year concludes. So that's something that is becoming more popular, and naturally, those that are beginning to look around will look at that as a potential option. So again, idealistically, you just want transparency. Hey, are you considering this? And I think the bye week is a great time to check in, and it starts with your peers, right? So in Thornton's case, your fellow wide receivers. Then it goes to your wide receivers coach, Junior Adams. Okay, hey, let's check in with everybody. Let's sit down and meet for 10, 15 minutes just to see how you're doing, how you're feeling, how's school going, all the typical stuff that we don't talk about ever when it comes to college football and roster management. And then if there is some question marks or worry, then it goes up the chain, up to the OC, Kenny Dillingham, eventually to the head coach, Dan Lanning, and then you kind of go from there. So in theory, you try to nip it in the bud via your culture and transparency. And I think with a younger coaching staff, you're a little bit more likely to see something like that fully play out. But at the end of the day, it's also understandable if that process is skipped altogether, right? That is the thick of the player empowerment era where there doesn't have to be this sort of system of checks and balances. And Thornton can go right to compliance and say, hey, throw me in the portal. And 48 hours later, he'll be there. So it really is an interesting double-edged sword in that regard. But it comes down to the player and being realistic. But I think from the other side of it, look at a guy like Thornton in particular, kid from Baltimore, played a lot last year as a true freshman, all the way across the country, and like you said, didn't take the jump that we've seen certainly with Troy Franklin and some others. You start to wonder if they become possibilities. It's another sort of casualty of recruiting so well, right? Because eventually some of these great players aren't going to end up sticking around at your program. So fascinating, conversation to dig into, and something that obviously is not going to go away.
And I think the thing that makes me think about Thornton as a potential candidate is he can't play anywhere really, like the body that he is. I'm sure you scouted this when he came out of high school. He's a boundary receiver, right? He's lining up on the outside. You're not going to put him in the slot. You're not going to bring him in motion on fly sweeps. Like what he can do, which he can be very good at. I still believe in his potential, but the coaching staff has, as you said, no ingrained loyalty because they didn't recruit him. So they're putting the best guys who they feel are out there on the field week in and week out, and he hasn't been able to capture as much playing time, I'm sure, as he's hoped. I mean, we've seen glimpses of it, right? He played pretty well against Georgia. He had a big catch against Washington State. He's done a lot of really good things, and he's certainly not the only guy, right? I mean, with Sean Dollars in there and Seven McGee, and you can go up and down the roster, frankly, and find guys. But to your point, it is kind of the drawback of recruiting well, right? Is you're not going to be able to give every high level recruit as many touches as he was hoping he might get when he committed to play at your school. It's just a reality of having that much talent.
100%. It's something that we see all the best schools go through, right? You want to add through the portal, but oftentimes there's a lot more subtraction because of that same issue. If you've got 50 blue chips on your roster, they're going to be stacked at certain positions, and they're going to eventually take a look around, whether it's a position change, a school change, whatever it may be. You look at Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, same kind of deal, right? It's happening across college football. I remember one year Alabama signed, and this is absurd, they signed Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara in the same recruiting class, in addition to 2 other really good running backs. They were
That's
all blue
insane.
chips.
That's insane.
So after year one, Derrick Henry's starting to get into the rotation, which is an absurdity in and of itself. And Kamara's not, right? So Kamara's out of there, right? Goes to JUCO and ends up at Tennessee before really blowing up and exploding at the NFL level. But that's, again, it's just a part of recruiting well, and it happens at the very top of college football. It's just something you got to deal with. I mean, Quinn Ewers was the number 4 quarterback at Ohio State last year, and now he's the darling of the Big 12, and it looks poised to be the newcomer of the year, maybe nationally in college football. So it really is something that all the great teams have to deal with, and navigating that is extremely tough, right? Because to one point you want to, when you get to the finish line of signing day, you want to be done recruiting that prospect. You want to say, hey, you're a semi-professional pretty much at this point. Handle your business or don't. And if there's going to be a move made, just communicate it, right? We want what's best for you, whether it's here or somewhere else. Um, but it's not that simple, right? These guys are teenagers. They're across the country. They're all the best players at their high school. It's very understandable on both sides of this type of equation. And let's also not discount how tough it is on the player to absorb a new system, new terminology. Maybe it was simpler under the previous regime, right? Maybe it was more friendly to that 6'5", 200-pound wide receiver as opposed to guys who are a little bit more conventional and can move around a little bit more. So, it could be as simple as terminology or blocking, things we don't talk about again at the wide receiver position. It could be something that simple that is maybe slowing down the amount of reps or rotations that you do get during a given game. So it really does work both ways, and the truth is often somewhere in between one side versus the other, just like it is in most cases.
It's a good situation overall for Oregon to be in, even though there's a drawback there when you have too much talent to keep everybody around. That certainly is a good problem to have. If you want to have yourself in a potentially problematic, but also potentially beneficial situation from a betting standpoint, you got to check out Bet Online, your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MMA, boxing, my personal favorite, golf. I'm reluctant to even mention the word Major League Baseball at this point. I guess it's 3 words, whatever it is, too painful at the moment. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. Well, there's still 4 games left. You never know. Come on, Mariners. BetOnline is where the game starts. Yeah, Mariners took it on the teeth the other day. I tell you what, that was a rough day for me, John. I had to go back and watch the Arizona Oregon highlights again just to give myself something good to feel about in a sports sense. It was pretty darn tough. Let's go to the high school recruiting ranks and move away from the transfer portal for a moment, but it's going to come back up on the show in the future. But Dante Dowdell, who is Oregon's top running back commit, I think only, if I'm not mistaken, in the class of 2023. He's from the state of Mississippi, and I saw him post on social media, which is generally pretty normal and such. When a school offers you, it's expected that you go out and make a post and act excited, even if you're planning to go elsewhere. But the offer came from our old friend Mike Leach down there at Mississippi State, whose Bulldogs are off to a good start this year. I was surprised that an in-state kid hadn't got an offer from them at that point in time. Is there any concern at all about Dowdell eventually flipping away from Oregon and looking at a school like Mississippi State?
Look, you get to this time of year, Spencer, and there's always a little bit of concern, especially again, like we talked about Dante Thornton, kid across the country, right? If it's a Pacific Northwesterner, a Californian, something like that, you feel a little bit more at ease, just all things even. But when it's something like this, you certainly keep an eye on it just a little bit closer. But I will say, Carlos Lofton's done a really good job recruiting running backs this cycle. Obviously, his ties to the South have resonated with kids. Ditto for Kenny Dillingham and others. And I was just like you. I thought Mississippi State offered this kid 2 years ago, right? Because Ole Miss had offered, I think right when Kiffin got there, and the battle was between Oregon and Ole Miss. That was sort of the surprise down south, was that Oregon pulled him out of Mississippi, which is not easy to do, particularly with what Ole Miss has been able to do at the running back position over the last couple of years, really, again, under Kiffin, and we're seeing that again this year. So that was the surprise, and the thought was always, okay, as time goes on and as the season, gets here, does Ole Miss circle back and try to get him back on the verbal commitment list? Because they are running back lists as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, in the class of 23. So Mississippi State was never a part of it. One, because Ole Miss was considered the favorite before Oregon got involved, and two, because this is a big 6'1", 225-pound downhill back. Not exactly a Mike Leach staple. So I do think that is somewhat unique in offering at this time, because now you're saying, if you're I was going to say Wazoo, if you're Mississippi State, now you're saying we don't usually do this, but for you, we will try this. And I think that is something quite interesting for, like we talked about earlier, a kid who wants the football, right? I think something like that could pique his interest. I would expect him, just because of the proximity to get to campus. I know when he committed to Oregon, he talked about maybe keeping some visit slates open. I think he only took one or two officials. So there is room for him over these next couple months to take some other visits. So whether it's Mississippi State or Ole Miss or someone else, I would expect that to happen just because this is a kid who grew up in SEC country, who plays running back, who's having a great season, and people are going to circle the wagons on that regard. So I do think he'll take visits, and he'll be one to worry about to a degree for Oregon fans. But he's still committed. He hasn't decommitted at this point. I think if he was further along, he would have opened it up and said, hey, look, I want to stay closer to home. None of that conversation is coming from Dowdell's camp. So I think on that front, optically, things look really good. Those around him have been up to Eugene a bunch of times as well. So this isn't something where the kid committed because he likes the uniforms and that's kind of it. This is something that has been vetted. So I do kind of view these other options, particularly Mississippi State and again, Ole Miss, as due diligence. Just, hey, let me circle back one more time with the in-state schools just to make sure I want to head to Eugene here. So you're going to have to withstand that. But that's, again, we talked about it with the portal. That's the nature of recruiting at a very high level. You've got to flip kids and you've got to hold off others from flipping your own. And Dowdell will be one of the guys that, we magnify as we get closer to signing day here in about 2 months.
Speaking of flipping, there are more than a few schools who would love to flip Jurrion Dickey and have poked and prodded on that particular front, but all has been kind of quiet on the Western front when it comes to Jurrion Dickey, and it appears as if he's staying west with the Ducks, at least at this point in time. Is hearing no news on that front, is that because he's trying to keep these offers and conversations on the down low, or is it that he still appears to be 100% locked into Oregon?
Look, there's certainly no shortage of programs that are inquiring consistently about Jurrion Dickey. But until it's reciprocated with tangible visits that he actually confirms as visits and not fishing trips, I do think it quells the worry to a degree. On top of that, he's been back up to Eugene, right? This is not a prospect that's just shutting it down and going quiet off of everyone. He has been up to Eugene, and I'm assuming, if that UCLA game's as big as we think it's going to be, he'll be back up there for that one and maybe more before all is said and done. I think the real worry point with Dickey was in between Jaden Rashada committing to Miami and Dante Moore committing to Oregon. That was kind of the window where it was like, man, that's his guy. He's been down there. He's played with him. That was kind of the biggest worry spot. And I think Miami's season has probably helped to slow down some of that worry, particularly offensively, where they're just not the type of program we thought they were going to be from a consistency standpoint. I'm sure Dickey is aware of that in his own, or Oregon is reminding him if it's not the case. So I do think that the quiet, no news portion of this is good for Oregon. That's my long roundabout way of saying that. Again, he's been back to campus. He has always maintained publicly that he is a Duck and he will be a Duck. This was his dream school, regardless of coaching staff, obviously geographically compared to some of these schools in the ACC and SEC that want him. Oregon, makes a lot more sense relative to staying close to home. So I do still think this is very much Oregon's race to lose. I expect him to sign with Oregon at this point, barring some huge changes, right? Things we haven't seen, like official visits, confirmed visit plans, or another program really starting to press here because the clock's ticking, right? We're just over 2 months from early signing day. So if there's not a lot of smoke at this point, that's typically a good sign.
Well, that's certainly encouraging to hear, because one thing I was thinking about when pondering the Dante Thornton and whether or not he would transfer after this year, and is there going to be enough playing time, and Franklin's taken this big leap forward, is Chase Cota is going to leave after this year, and he's been a big part of Oregon's offense, and he's been a productive part of it. He's been everything I hoped he would be when he came over from UCLA, guy who had Willie Taggart not left and gone to Florida State, probably would have committed to Oregon from the jump because that's where his dad played. So I've really enjoyed that. But he's playing his last year of college football for sure. This is year 5 for him. He's done after the season, no more eligibility. And I look at Jurrion Dickey and I almost see like an even more athletic, better version of Chase Cota, who's been good, but a guy who you can line up outside, but put him in the slot and dare another defensive back to try and keep up with him, and his agility and physicality and the just outright speed that he's got. He brings so many traits there, and though I really do like Cota and what he's done, I feel like that's kind of where Dickey will fit into the offense. So hopefully Oregon able to keep him there.
Yeah, you manufacture
Yeah, go ahead.
touches for guys like that, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, that's he's just that kind of athlete, right?
Yeah.
He's just that kind of athlete where you watch him, and I watched him down at the OT 7-on-7 in Vegas, and a guy who's that thick shouldn't be able to move his feet the way that he does. And that's why he's become a 5-star, highly coveted wide receiver prospect. And Oregon, I think, is in a good position there. At least I hope. And I hope that continues to be the case because I think he's got the potential to be a really, really good player. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball real quick. I saw something, and I just want your thoughts on, where Matayo Uiagalelei is at in his recruiting process and such. We followed him for a while here on the show, but before you answer that question, John, he was wearing Oregon gloves at a high school game the other day. Is there anything to that sort of stuff? Like, does that matter at all?
No, of course not. I mean, look, it's great for Twitter, and it'll move there more than anywhere else. But look, these
Okay.
kids, especially a kid like that, my gosh, you think of the places he's been. His family is taking advantage of NIL, whether it's at the collegiate level with his big brother, or even at the high school level where it's legal in California. Look, these kids, they love gear. I mean, has never changed in recruiting. They love gear. So acquiring it, however they acquire it, and showing it off is just a part of the process. You can't go to a big time high school football game and not see 3 or 4 different pairs of gloves on kids. I've seen a bunch committed to one school wearing gloves of the other school, and it's just, hey, either matches my high school uniform, or hey, these are really sticky and they're brand new, so I want to use them to play
Okay.
better. It is usually as simple as that. But yeah, it's always noteworthy, right? You're never wearing gloves of a school you don't like, right? So I guess there's at least a surface level layer of, oh, okay, that's interesting, but that's really where it should stop, because it really doesn't correlate much thereafter. These kids have, they've got 10, 12, 15 pairs, including, multiple of the same school as well. So the towels, the gloves, the mouthpieces, the cleats we've even seen now. We're starting to see the cleats get out. Don't know how that happens, but it happens. All that stuff is a little too much to read into, but usually it's just, hey, this is great Nike brand new type gear, and I like it, and it feels good, and it's going to help me play. So that's usually the primary function there. Some
Johnny,
trolling as well. These kids are smart too. Sometimes it's trolling, but I don't
just
believe that in
trying to
Mateo's
just
case.
trying to
No.
get a little bit of the hype machine rolling and
Yeah,
get
yeah,
fans
it's
attention, be like, hey, look what I'm wearing and such. But John, are you telling me that you're unsure of how Oregon, with a particular shoe based company of which you are supporting with your shirt there,
I am.
is getting shoes out to players? I, for one, would not be surprised if that were the case. I'm just throwing it out there, but I think you make a lot of great points and such, and they probably have more gear than they could than they could even wear because that's
Right.
just the nature of recruiting, right? You throw the kitchen sink at them if that's what is required on the recruiting front. But where is Oregon at with Mateo and in the recruiting front, and is he still a guy who's going to have a longer timeline?
Yeah, I think Oregon's still in really great shape, but yeah, I do think this thing's still going to extend, and that's the best news for Oregon in this case, right? Obviously extremely familiar, family wise, with Clemson. He's been to Ohio State since he was like a freshman. That presentation is still the same, right? It's great pass rusher legacy. It's Larry Johnson. That has been the same for years in that regard. Oregon and USC, to a degree, those are the ones benefiting from the timeline extending, because this is a new coaching staff in both cases, and they're trying to be more specific about that pitch and how it could resonate with the Uiagalelei family. So I do think it's more advantageous for those two Pac-12 programs in the race as opposed to all the others, because those offers, that feel has been the same for multiple years, as to where it's still less than a year in for both Dan Lanning and Lincoln Riley, respectively. But yeah, the Ducks are in great shape. He's visited a couple times already recently. We talked about it last time. He played a game at Outson, which is really cool, and kind of convenient timing for both sides here. So yeah, Oregon's going to stay right in the thick of this thing. I think all the way through. I still view it as more of a 3-team race with the Ducks, the Trojans, and the Buckeyes there in the crosshairs, but I don't see any near end in sight. Typically, when you get this close to December, this close to National Signing Day, you're starting to wind it down privately, but publicly, you're not going to just come out, on Thanksgiving or some random day and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to commit here, especially ahead of the in-home visit season, right? All these head coaches are going to be in Bellflower to see him and sit down with him and make their final pitches. He could still take visits for some of the big games that are going to happen here across the sport as well. So typically that's going to keep the door open all the way through with an elite prospect like Matayo. So I expect the Oregon hat to be on the table, but I also expect this to be more of a December decision.
Well, that will certainly be a big one because Oregon, in my view, is still waiting for that big defensive line commit. There have been a lot of, good-looking 4-star edge and defensive tackle prospects, but I'm looking at either, since David Hicks went to Texas A&M, Matayo or Samuel Mpemba. I've been harping on it for months here on the show. Like, I think Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy really, really want to get one of them, and that's what I would like to see as well, especially given that after the season, Dorlus is probably going to the NFL, and DJ Johnson is out of eligibility, and those have been Oregon's 2 best pass rushers consistently. You talked about Ohio State's legacy of churning out great pass rushers, Chase Young and the Bosa brothers and all that sort of stuff. I think when Matayo gets on campus, you just plaster the wall with Kayvon Thibodeau content just everywhere. You just put his face up, just be like, just a reminder of what you can do if you're an elite pass rusher here at the University of Oregon. I saw something the other day about Thibodeau being the best among rookies so far in generating quarterback pressures, which is weird because I heard all this incredibly insightful commentary from people who had definitely watched him play a lot of football about how he wasn't really committed to football and how he, it's just all about the outside interest stuff. And, I question his effort on the field, yada, yada. I'm like, man, you've got, taking a victory lap there over anybody and anybody who questioned that because Thibodeau looks like a stud. And he didn't even play the first couple games. He's
I was going
leading
to say he
rookies
was
in that.
banged up too. Yeah.
Exactly. And he's banged up. He might not even be 100% yet. Turns out the guy's a stud. Giants got a good pick. And what do you know? The Giants are 4-1. Last guy I want to ask you about, John. Oregon had a commitment recently on the offensive line, not a huge heralded prospect like the guy I want to ask you about. That's Samson Okunlola, who I kind of thought, I don't know why, I was under the impression he'd already committed or he was kind of off the board. But then I was looking at recruiting circles and I see on 24/7, Oregon's interest to him is warm, not cool. They're in the mix. Is there a chance here? I mean, this is a big 5-star offensive tackle who would be as highly coveted, frankly, as Josh Connerly in terms of a young offensive line prospect. Is there any chance for Oregon here, or is a boy just sitting here dreaming?
No, there's still a chance. He has been really quiet, as you mentioned. At the end of the summer, there was a lot of buzz for Miami. It felt like it was a matter of when and not if he would pick the Hurricanes. But I think you couple their in season struggles with him just kind of taking his time and not making a bunch of visits. I think he went to Boston College for a trip just because they were nearby. He's a Massachusetts kid. But that was kind of it. And he plays a lot of Saturday games. So pretty hard to take visits to colleges when your high school is playing on Saturdays. So
High school on
he's been,
Saturday.
well, yeah, welcome to the Northeast, right? You get a lot of that in Connecticut, Massachusetts, New
High
York,
school football is on Friday, John. That is a
etc.
crime. That is a
You're
crime.
preaching to the choir here.
You are supposed to enjoy the wonderful progression. Thursday night football, Friday night lights, Saturday college football, Sunday NFL, Monday night football. That's what it's supposed to be. Shame on the people in the Northeast.
Yeah, so he's been real quiet on the visit front because of that. Really, a total logistical issue. He's only taken 3 official visits, so he has the window to take up to 2 more, and that has created a lot of questions around him. Hey, could you possibly take some visits here before all is said and done? Previously, he said, if I took other officials, it would be in September. So by October, I'm going to know what I'm doing. Well, September came and went with 0 recorded visits. So now in October, he is saying that he could still potentially take the trips. But the problem is None of them are confirmed. None of them are planned or locked in at this point. So it's probably pushing those trips, if he takes them, closer to the holiday season where high school football is done and even college football starts to wind down right at Thanksgiving, rivalry weekend, all that stuff. So it could push the visits, if he takes them, to that point. And a lot of programs are in the mix in that regard, right? It's he visited Miami, Alabama, and Michigan State officially. So naturally, those who didn't get an official are really pressing to get one, right? So Oregon is in that group. Ohio State is in that group. A couple other schools are trying to get him on campus to see if they can now contend late in the game for Okunlola. So that's really kind of the way to gauge this thing. If you're not one of the three he's already visited, again, that's Bama, Michigan State, and Miami. Do you get him on campus or do you not? I mean, that's really the gauge of the late push, the late chance that a given program has. Again, he's been high on Oregon in the past. Obviously, the tradition there, the recruiting recently there is something that attracts him. It's ditto for Ohio State. So I do think on the surface level, those two could be the official visit destinations. But Clemson has tried to get involved here. A bunch of other schools have tried to get into the conversation. I believe Florida, Georgia, among them. So depending on how that shakes out closer to the end of next month, I think we could start to finalize what Okunlola may want to do. Or he just says, screw it, and he commits out of nowhere. I think he's more likely to do that than Uiagalelei. But I do think there's still clearly some due diligence Okunlola wants to manufacture before a final decision. Because otherwise, to me, he'd been committed to Miami in June or July.
Well, we'll be holding out hope on that front and holding out hope that we get John Garcia Jr. back on the show soon, Director of Recruiting for Sports Illustrated. John, great insight as always. Appreciate the time.
Always a pleasure, Spencer. Take care.
I appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.